Jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. Welcome, everybody, to PBJamz. Music and picture books, what a perfect sandwich. Squish them all together, what a yummy snack. PBJamz, yummy books and music. PBJamz, reading, writing, teaching. PBJamz, what a yummy treat. Jamming PBs all the time. PBJamz, songish books and bookish songs. Tips for music teachers, interviews and book reviews. A little singing and dancing. PBJamz, yummy books and music. PBJamz, reading, writing, teaching. PBJamz, what a yummy treat. Jamming PBs all the time. PBJamz.
Good morning or afternoon, our PBJamz friends. We're so thankful that you are joining us today. And we have Emily Mullock and Patrick Baggatta today, the author and illustrator of Rockstar Recess, which is a super fun picture book that would be awesome for families and parents. It would be great for teachers to use in their classroom and also great for music teachers to use. So I'm going to link up a bunch of really cool stuff for all of you guys below. And also Emily and Patrick have sent me some author tips. So for the authors that are joining us, we'll have some good stuff for you as well. So Emily and Patrick, thanks for joining us today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Awesome.
Thank you.
Super fun book. So let's just dive in right away and talk about the inspiration for Rockstar Recess. How did that come about?
Yeah, we'll try not to stomp on each other a little bit here. But Emily, do you want to get us started?
I mean, I think, so Patrick and I work together a lot. We can get into it in a minute. So we tell lots of different stories together, but I think a common thread is we really like stories about kids that get carried away and go about their adventures in sort of, larger than life ways. And so, I think that this is at its heart a story about kids that are celebrating, music and rock and roll, in this very kid-friendly way. But there's also a lot of other kid characters on the sidelines that are going through their own sort of larger than life, career adventures in the span of a 50-minute recess. So I think, that's a start. Patrick, do you want to talk about some of the other?
Yeah, I think where that very quickly led us to is, this concept and sort of being inspired by honestly, more grown-up movies, Almost Famous, or even, from years ago, Spinal Tap. These sort of over-the-top rockumentary type stories where, that the person doing the interview is really part of the story. The whole thing just kind of takes on a life of its own, and you really sort of see the fun and absurdity of, everything that kind of goes on behind the scenes. And it was just really fun to think about all of that through the lens of kids, and all of it in this really fun sort of compressed timeline of one sort of recess period.
Yeah.
So I think that's really how we got started with it.
Yeah, I'll say this one last point on it is, so I really loved Phoebe Gilman growing up. Her Gillian Jiggs series has this huge sort of DIY adventure feel to it. And I did a lot, I'm the less musical one of the two of us. I did a lot more of making as a kid. And so there's a lot of, it's over the top, but you can still see, the bits of the concert stage that are made with a parachute that they've crafted a lot of it. And so I think that that's just something that for me at least was a major driver of putting a lot of effort into very complicated book pages.
Yeah. So was there a moment, was there a specific impetus that one of you said to the other one, I think it'd be really cool if we did this book about kids making a rock star band in recess? How did the actual idea, was it inspired by somebody in your personal life, or how did you actually get that specific? Do you remember?
I mean, We are throwing ideas at each other all the time, and like it's almost how you said it is probably how we got there. We like to like think of titles a lot of the time too.
Yeah.
So Rockstar Recess was like that title was nailed immediately, just with that high level concept, and then I think it's bouncing stuff back and forth very organically is how we sort of make that into an actual story with like a narrative and like what's the conflict. How does that
Well, and that's a perfect segue into your process for working together. If you could talk a little bit more about that, and then about the publishing journey and how you came to be publishing stuff together.
Yeah. Emily and I have been working together for a while now, almost 10 years. Not quite, but
6 or 7.
I mean, we're sort of heading in that direction. We first started working together at Disney, where we were both working in the interactive division, leading creative teams for kids content, there. And we pretty quickly realized that we just make a good complementary pair, right? My background is primarily in writing. Emily's background is primarily on the visual side of things, but we both have a really comfortable, I think, way of working together, and as Emily said, in this sort of organic manner. So, we don't have, I think in a lot of cases in picture books, there might be an author, for example, who writes a manuscript, and then maybe the publisher even helps them find an illustrator who would take that and go and illustrate it. And I don't mean to, like I'm sure there's been some amazing picture books made that way, but for us, it's much more of a back and forth, much more of the story informs the visuals inform the story. We both sort of contribute to, each other's sort of side of things in one way or another. And so, I personally, I think we're both really grateful to have this, to have our sort of working relationship that way.
Yeah, I mean, to get really specific, like, Patrick has a writing background. I'd done some kids publishing before, starting with like just illustrating 1 or 2 books, and then did a children's picture book that I wrote and illustrated myself. But the way that we sort of got, Rockstar Recess published is putting together a like picture book dummy that had pretty cleaned up illustrations and like copy sort of placed into it, and use that to connect with an agent that eventually got the book picked up by someone. So just to sort of share some like specific context, because I know you have listeners or watchers, viewers that are on their own publishing journeys, and so I think specific can be helpful.
Yeah. So when an agent picked up, so do you guys like come as a package deal? Does the agent represent both of you together?
Yes, which I don't think that makes it easier. I think that was harder because it's very, like Patrick says, it's not traditional, but it's just how we work in animation and children's book. Honestly, most of our projects are actually ones that are in development. And so to plan our time, we really want to work on projects that are joint ones, and we just eventually found an agent. Our agent is Nicole to go to that is so gung-ho on taking on unusual situations that she is really great at making this work.
That's go ahead, Patrick.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think to elaborate on Emily's point, from the creative perspective, it's great for us. We love it. And there's no question there are way more pros than cons. But I think when it came time to finding a publisher for this book, it really does sort of mean that you need 2 check marks at the same, with the same project, right? People have to like both the writing and the illustrations. And I think everybody always loves the illustrations, to be frank, but I think that the writing is tricky, and it's very subjective, and so I think there were some challenges, honestly. So I would say that as far as a recommendation goes, I would still recommend find a partner, or if you at least keep an open mind towards that if you're a writer or illustrator. But yeah, it's it has its tricky moments as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everything has its pros and cons. I think there's a lot of authors out there that would love to hear that there's at least a possibility for working together with. I know there's a few that have like a family member, like some of them have written, and like their kid is an illustrator, and like they really want their child to illustrate the book, you know. So it's good to know that that is at least a possibility, because it's not something that's talked about very often in the publishing circles and in the way that you guys do it. So that's awesome. So Emily, you mentioned that Patrick is the more musical of you. Let's talk a little bit about the musical connections in the story. Obviously, if you have a book entitled Rockstar Recess, there's definite musical connections. So
yeah, music has always been a really big part of my life. And, you know, and honestly, it did start when I was a kid. I sort of my whole life, I thought this was unusual, but I absolutely started fake bands with my friends on the playground. And I remember that, you know, very distinctly. That was something that, that sort of meant a lot to me. And we didn't play anything. We didn't know but we really loved this idea of sort of being in a band. And that for me, you know, really carried through. And as soon as I could learn to play guitar, you know, I started and then soon was in real bands, and you know, that was just a really big part of my life. And I think that you know, I do think that went all the way back to those sort of earliest dreams. And so I think that was an easy connection for me on this book, because I know not every kid dreams of it, which is something else we can, I think, talk about with Rockstar Recess. But you know, there are those of us out there who,
sure.
Yeah. I think, like, for me, not musical. I'm really not. I do think the forming a rock band on the playground and talking to people about this book, it's crazy the number of people I've talked to that have a similar experience. And it's the same thing where it's because it's really cool and aspirational in a way where music, you know, makes people feel things, and how cool to be the person that is the sort of rock star at the center of that. But as a kid, you maybe don't know quite how to get there. Sure. And so the book sort of has those themes of both of like ambition, but also maybe it's good to do some practicing along the way.
Yeah, figuring things out as you go. Yeah, I think that's absolutely a universal theme, and I think everybody dreams of being in the spotlight in some way. I wanted to be a rock star diva when I was, 10, 11, 12. I mean, I think many of us, you're right, Patrick, I think many of us have those dreams. So that's really awesome. The musical connections are super fun. I love, as a K2 music teacher myself in my day job now, like I love that the music teacher plays a nice role in that story, and kind of he comes back to help them sort of save face at the end. So exactly. That's a super fun, 3 cheers for Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Like music teachers are gonna love that. It's gonna be super fun. What is there a favorite part that each of you have, like one favorite spread or one favorite line, or just a favorite plot point?
For me, it's actually sort of spread out through the book, but funny enough, the book obviously is Rockstar Recess, and it is about 3 kids who really sort of take on that dream. But honestly, I think my favorite part are the kids who are following their dreams sort of along with the rush of this. So we have a kid who we, for a long time, we just called the reporter kid. We've since quietly named him Odell, but Odell's dream isn't to be a rock star, it's to be a great journalist, right? And he's sort of right there following his dreams. And we have another kid who is all about stage effects, and she's in the background of one of the shots. Right. We have another sort of business, enterprise kid, we call the merch kid, right? Who's right there, making sure that he's ready with all the sort of Rebels merchandise, right? So I really love those. And honestly, that's a lot of credit to Emily, who is sort of inventing those kids along the way. And they, they really do become part of the story, even if they don't have lines, or even if they don't sort of have the, the main plot line dedicated to them.
Yeah, there is so many kids in this book, and I will tell you, for anyone that goes out and reads it, so this is the class at the start, and Tanya's talking about, there's the teacher, quietly but full of wisdom towards the end of the book, but all of these kids sort of transform from like normal kids into, by the end they are like mad scientists and journalists, and each of those kids is in here. You can like find them in their different roles, and like by the end, the spectacle just gets bigger and bigger in terms of press conferences and security, and just like huge spreads that, like, Patrick and I both colored this book because there was so much going on, so many kids, and you can like add friends and family in because of that. So I did add my parents are in here, up in the like booth, and so like that just was so much work, but it was such a joy to like when it was done, it was amazing. I will say another thing that I love is I love Patrick's writing in this, and we were supposed to do like a co-event together that, of course, because of all the shipping problems and conflicts, Patrick like didn't happen in time. He'd left the town where I live by the time it came time to do it, which meant I had to read the picture book, for the audience, which is like always like nerve-wracking, but so fun. It was so fun to read aloud because it's so over dramatic. I'm going to read a tiny section, my favorite section. Right at towards the end. We don't know any songs, cried Lizzie. Do you think they'll notice? We suddenly felt barfy. The hard work, the sacrifice, the cool face paint, all for what? It's just like
that's that so deep dark moment, right? That deep dark despair. Like, what have we done all this for? I love it. I love it. And I love your point, Patrick, about how all these kids have different dreams, but also it points to the fact that whenever you take on a creative endeavor, like there's a whole team of people surrounding that make it happen. I mean, you guys know this from the Disney perspective with the animation, but also from the book and publishing. And, the same thing's true for us as teachers, like any big creative endeavor. I mean, we do shows usually, a few a year, and like, it's not just me. And like everybody has to get on board with that. So that's a great message for kids that are going to one day be grown-ups in the real world and need to be able to work as part of a team, and that everybody's important. Like, that's a fabulous message.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's, that really comes together for us in this book, because that's quietly what's happening. Everybody's pitching in, everybody has their part, and everybody, has something that they can be passionate about. And then you look and see what they were able to achieve because of that, right? Like, that it's all under this tight constraint. What they're doing is obviously, impossible, and yet they managed to pull it off with one little, oversight, of course, but still, and so it's completely true. I think everything we've ever done on the creative side is absolutely dependent on the whole team, and people contribute in all sorts of ways, big ways, small ways, quiet ways, loud ways, and I think that's something you learn to appreciate really quickly when you're doing this kind of work.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of passion and all these great projects, do you guys have anything in the works, in the pipeline, anything coming up that you want to share with us?
Yeah, we don't have things we can announce.
Of course. The joys of publishing, right?
I know. Yeah. And we can see at the end of Rockstar Recess, I mean, every inch of this book is like packed. We realized we didn't leave anywhere even to sign. It's just like, it's all covered. And so the end spread and end of the book hints towards a potential sequel. And so, we'll see if that happens, but we have some fun ideas there.
Got you. Wonderful.
Yeah. And then as Emily mentioned, we're also busy working on animation projects, also in the cannot be announced yet category. Apologies, but I think what we are excited about is, it's exactly how Emily sort of kicked us off. This idea of kids, sort of getting carried away. And so I think that that's, that's a recurring theme in a lot of the projects that we do. I think we really enjoy making content for kids, to be honest, mostly because I think there is that sort of imagination aspect, and there is that, the sort of endless possibilities aspect. And and I think that that's something that's always been fun for us, and we just find that there's always more to sort of dig out of that. So
Absolutely. And I think that's very much how kids' minds work. They're quick to go over the top. I was just watching a webinar with some friends last night at the retreat, and that was one of the things he talked about, is how as adults we kind of lose that connection with the impossible or the outlandish. But kids, they're all about that. So a rock star concert in 20 minutes is, we can do that. Yeah. I mean, as adults, we totally freak out about that because we've learned, to kind of stifle that creative side a little bit, really. So it's fun to reconnect with those dreams of childhood. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So is there anything that I haven't asked you to talk about that you would like to share? Anything you would like for us to know?
Yeah, I think, in a way we sort of touched on it a little bit, but I think again, that theme of sort of teamwork and creativity and ingenuity, those are things that we found a story for in Rockstar Recess, but really those are like how we sort of work together. And that's sort of how we we're trying to sort of engage in that all the time. And I think, part of what I think we hope that people really take away from this book is that even though there is some fun comeuppance in the end for Elsie and her friends, because they did skip a step, we still sort of think that this book is a success, right? This was a successful Rockstar Recess, right? And I think for us, that is all about, not being too precious with your ideas, and and just, if you've got something that feels like there's something there, if you've got something you want to express, now's the time. And so again, I think that's just something that, I'm not sure that we necessarily planned that going in, but when we look back on it now, we can sort of see that, like, oh, there's some parallels to, I think, how we try to approach things.
Yeah, I think before we sort of teamed up, I was not a super great person at sharing work in group critiques. And so, Tanya, I know you're a person that's super involved in writers groups, and all this idea of, putting stuff out there and getting critique and having collaboration. Because for anyone who's listening that, is maybe just starting their journey, that's something that's true, like we talked about within the publishing process as well, that will happen, at some point for you, is that people will have other ideas for your book, and it will get shaped and shit. So you might as well start with a really supportive friend group that's going to be there to share that stuff in the nicest way. So yeah, I think working with other people is just something that is one of the greatest joys of doing this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to think that writing was kind of a solo sort of a thing. And once I got into the Kidlit community, it didn't take me long to realize that writing is a team sport. Like, it really is, and I mean, not just with the illustrator, but with your critique groups and your partners that are weighing in and helping you make your story better. It's not all you. That felt kind of cheating to me in the beginning. Like, it's like, oh, but that's not my idea.
Sure.
Right.
And so it took a while to realize that that's okay. We're just kind of helping each other along the ladder, and it's beautiful once you get used to it. But Emily, it takes a little while, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, but
so
good.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. We've had a great team on this project. The book is published by Sterling. Funny story, Sterling changed their name sort of midstream, and so they're really called Union Square Kids now. But our team there, our book agent just really great and have added so much to this. Have really, I think, have really helped us sort of shape this. And I think, it's also exciting for us to, picture books probably, maybe this is fair, maybe more than ever, I think can really be about anything. And I think picture books are tackling some really, big and important issues these days. And I think we're all grateful that that's the case. I think for us, it was really exciting to, be able to tell a story about something in some ways more familiar, like something about this sort of, imagination and adventure, and just something that we do hope and think that kids will love. And, I think it was just really exciting for us to find that there's a home for that too, right? And, even while other people are tackling, these sort of big, important issues, and I'm eternally grateful that they are, for us, this was sort of what we really think about, and hopefully, we can inspire kids to, to sort of follow their dreams and to do some real good in the world too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about balance. You need the heavy and deep, but you also need the light and fun, and you need that encouragement to follow your dreams wherever they may lead. Both of those are super important. One's not any more or less. They're just different. They're different sides of the same coin that help us just grow up to be well-rounded individuals ready to tackle whatever the world throws at us, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Anything for you, Emily, before we close out?
I'm all out of thoughtful things to say.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. What a great conversation. Y'all, I'm so excited about this book. It's really wonderful. I know the teachers and the music teachers in particular, I've got some fun things that are going to be linked up in the stuff below. A lot of variations on Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and some fun things to play along with that. So I know that people all over just going to enjoy this book so much. So thank you for taking a few minutes to share it with us today, and your inspiration and your way of working together, and for all the encouragement you've provided. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you.
It's been super fun. PBJamz folks, thanks for joining us too. We'll see you next time on PBJamz.
Yummy books